Welcome runners to this class. I'm Max and I'm going to teach you all the ways around natural running and how to progress with it. In this class we're going to be talking about getting used to natural running and my experience with the technique and how long it took me and how I can now help you in adapting to it, because I know firsthand how challenging mentally and physically it can be on a new runner. Now, if you are unfamiliar with natural running, I do have a full crash course linked down in the bio, description or bio, I'm not too sure what it's called, but it's down there and it will teach you everything about natural running, from the technique, how to perform it, the history behind it, and how it is slowly being taken away from us as a human species, really. And it also covers meditational breathing, dieting and stretching, and it just everything you will need, a crash course into how to learn to run for a beginner. It's very short with an exam at the end, and it's up for a discount price right now, and it won't take too long. It's an hour-long class, but you will need to hold a longer time period for it, because making notes and taking in, it's a lot of information given to you quite quickly. So just heads up on that if you do look to get this technique done properly. When performed properly, natural running will help your endurance, it will help your speed, it will help your maintenance of recovery. So less injuries, you'll be able to go for runs more frequently, and it's really a superpower when it comes to mental awareness and competition over other new beginners going into running. You will have a clear head start, and you won't have to fall down on the common traps that I fell into when I started running, when I was completely oblivious to the technique. Unfortunately, it is beginners that are completely unaware of the natural running technique. I was with a friend the other day, and I was with his father, and he was telling his dad about how I was starting up this trend of natural running, and I wanted to show it to other people, to beginners of runners. And he didn't really explain like that. He just said I was teaching a running course and seminar thing. And the dad was just stopped and was like, I thought running was just going out on the pavement and going. And I had to stop him and was like, if you were to do that down the line, I'm not sure when it would be, you will pick up an injury and it will be horrible and it will make you have to stop running. And if you were to have fallen in love with the sport and the freedom it gives you, having that injury now come up is going to completely devastate you. And that's why this needs to be taught properly to new runners. I'm sure a lot of elite runners will look down on this, maybe, I'm not too sure, as to say, well, it's just easy. It is easy once you know it. This is for the new beginners. And if I was to have taught my friend's dad properly, I would have to explain all this and everything in the course to him, to show how different it can be for someone unaware. If you are a beginner who's looking into this maybe, and you're maybe questioning if or not you want to delve into this, I just have to ask you a simple question. Do you want to be one of those clueless people who are completely unaware of the damage they are doing to their body? I mean, you can go out drinking and smoking, fine, but when it comes down to the sport, to an action of physical demand, you want the complete safety behind you. No, you don't want to be the person that's completely unaware and oblivious to the injuries that they're going to maintain throughout their life because of this poor technique. The impact of running incorrectly on your heel is the exact same as a hammer tapping on your knee. Now, if you were to measure that out over a long period of time, it's why a lot of runners, they when they enter old age, they just can't use their knees properly. There's a guy who lives local to me, he's an old gentleman, and he was very envious one day of my running. He would watch me go out running up the hill, and he was very envious, and he told me, he was like, if I knew this, if I knew the way you would glide, when you said I was gliding across the pavement, it's a very nice compliment, but he said if I was to have known that, I would be running now. I didn't know how to run properly, and now his knees are gone. And I see him try to run, and it's unfortunate to watch him because you can tell he still has the passion for it, but his body just hasn't, just isn't equipped for it anymore, unfortunately. But possibly, it could have been, if he was to have known this. So let me explain how I learnt this technique, discovered it for myself, and implemented it into my running. So now it is now my default technique. The idea of running how I was before is completely gone. Completely gone. It feels so uncomfortable. And when I see people running now, new people out running, you can tell when a new runner is out. And I just have to watch their feet and see what they're doing. And 50, 60% of the time, it's not good. It's not good, and I can see my faults in their running. And so I was forced to stop running for a couple months after a hospitalisation from an injury from running, strain down around in my groin area. And I was devastated. It was the summer, it was perfect time for running. So I took some time off during that time. And I would cycle instead, just to relieve some just urge to get out there and get some cardio in me, really. But I went into some research on the technique. Oh, sorry, I didn't know about the technique at this point. I just went into some research. I remember when I was a child, in my athletics club, someone was talking about a type of running like a horse, like how it would gallop and flick its back leg out, its back legs out, sorry. And they said it was on the front of your foot. And I remember the coach being like, oh, yeah, we'll get into that. That's a bit further down the line. We were very young. But I always remembered it because it seemed so alien to me. And when you're a child, you do seem to pick up on things that are said, even the smallest things, but because they're weird to you at the time, you always hold on to that memory. And I did hold on to that memory because I loved running. And when someone can tell me that there's something better out there, a way to do it, of course I'm going to remember that and pick it up. So I remembered it, and I used that as a basis for some research. And it brought me to something I found: barefoot running. Barefoot running, natural running, how it's properly supposed to be done, where it's very simple, you would run barefoot. And you might be so squeamish at that idea, like I was, and I kind of still am really, that idea of pounding the pavement and your bare feet with the stones, and it just sounds horrible. It sounds disgusting, it sounds painful, it sounds just, oh no. But it isn't done really on the concrete, as I learned. It's done cross country. It's done cross country, grass and mud and whatever. And then you have to think about African tribes and how they would run barefoot, and you go, oh, perhaps there is something in this. So I stayed with that idea. I never tried it, obviously, but I stayed with the idea in the research. I found out how they would do it. They would do it on the front of their foot, on the ball of their foot. And I was like, oh, that seems pretty interesting. And I learned the science behind it, which I go into in the course, of course. And I realized how much more beneficial and how long you can keep it up. And my first thought is, that looks pretty easy. That looks so adaptable. I can do that, no problem. No problem at all. So that brought me to the first day. I took the month of November, where it was still, I think this was a second or third lockdown at this point, I'm not too sure, I can't remember, but I do remember we were in lockdown because there was talks about Christmas being unavailable to see your family. I do remember that, but I took that month out and I would run every day, and I would do like One Punch Man's workout. I would do 100 push-ups, 100 squats and 100 sit-ups, I think it was. I think that's what I was doing. And I would also do. I started off with 5k. I know that's wrong for the law of that show, but I would move on to 10k. I think halfway through that month, and I would do it every day apart from Sunday. Sunday, I think I felt like I'd earned a break. So I went out for my first 5k. I would do the 5k first, and then I would do the exercises because I felt the 5k was hardest, and I'd just get out of the way first. So that's where I realised I couldn't do this technique. That's what I told myself at the time. I went out, and I think I managed 500 meters, half a kilometer, maybe, and then for the next 2 kilometers after that, I would try and implement it, and then I would lose it, go back to my default, my normal poor technique. I would try it, and then I would instantly go back. It just mentally, it just wasn't clicking with me, and I got home, and at this point, I just gave up and ran the whole run with my old poor technique. And it was afterwards I realised I can't. This is hard. This is going to be incredibly hard. And that doubt creeps in where you go, maybe I'm going to have to give this up. Maybe I just can't do it. I can't. I ran at that point. I was 20 years of age. 19 or 20, and I'd run since the age of 6 or 7. And I had. Maybe I was just thought, oh, I'll just buy some new shoes, some comfier shoes. I'll buy, and then I realised I'd just set myself up for a month of trying it, of doing that technique. And so this is where I had to learn how to adapt, how to mentally get over that barrier, and physically get over that barrier. And that's where I found out about the skipping technique. And I'd already had a skipping rope at this time because I used to do boxing training. So I had a very lightweight, good skipping rope. And you would skip on the front of your foot, as you probably know, to get that bounce. That's all this technique was, I realised. And if you were to run with that, luckily I've got a long garden, so I can run back and forth using the skipping rope. I looked a bit like a Wally, like a 5-year-old girl, running with my skipping rope. But that's all that technique was. There's more movement in the running form, more like your leg will come up more like a high knee, and then flick back more like a bum flick, like you would do for stretching. So I started doing that as well. Just before my run, I would do that back and forth a couple times, do the high knees, do the leg kicks at the back, the bum kicks, and then I'll be on my way. And after 2 weeks, I was managing a nearly 5k, not exactly full 5k, but nearly 5k. But at this point, I had told myself I'm going to do 10k's now. There's no way around it. So I saw it as a challenge because I was nearly hitting 5k of my technique before falling back into my old one. I would push for 6. I would push more than what I knew I could do. Because when you mentally set yourself up for a harder challenge, you automatically aim for it. You aim for that, and you might even look back at your goals, your original goals, that is, and realise, well, I was underselling myself there. So I aimed for 10k. I just straight aimed for, I went for 6 for like the first couple of days, and I was like, I'm going to go for the full 10. No matter how slow my runs were, I knew I was getting the kilometres in, and I knew because I was doing it for the whole month that my cardio would have been fine. I wouldn't have taken a dent by slowing down for speed. No, because I realised that being mentally aware and present during that run, that I could really, really like touch into something in me that I'd never even thought about before. Being mentally aware, it felt like meditation, which I've since gone on to do quite a lot. I think this may have been the starting block for that present and awareness that I have later found through that. This was great, this was amazing, and by the end of the month I could run a full 10k with my new technique. and it has now become my default. And I think it was there when it did. It was around that time of the month, at that last part of the month, where I would run out for my 10k and not even realise that I was using this new technique, and then the speed built, and then the endurance built, and I never looked back since. Because when you do start to leave an old part of you behind, that old technique behind, but not only are you leaving it behind, you're advancing on it. You're going so much further than you possibly could. You've left the baseline of what you were on just because you implemented this technique. Because I took that month out and learnt this new technique. You never go back. It's like learning a new skill. It's exactly the same as learning a new skill. It's not even an analogy. It just is. You advance and move on. And now it's default. It does change a lot of aspects of your life, because you have to become mentally aware. And it's just a brilliant, life-changing step, really. And yeah, it might seem a bit over the top me saying this, but you have to remember I was put in hospital for muscle strains and pulls, and because of my poor form. And yeah, it might have been down to harder stretches and more disciplined like warm-ups, but at the end of the day it was down to that technique. It was. And since then I've gone on to do incredible things with this technique. I was put into a 10-kilometer race around 2 years ago, but at this point I was at the gym bulking up, and I wasn't running as much as I wanted to. And my mum put me into this race, and I wasn't aware of this until 2 months before. So I was like, right, back to running. And just within those 2 months, I was building up my speed again and my endurance again, just falling back into that groove of that technique, because it had become my default. And by the time the race came around, I'd only gone out a couple of times for my runs, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and I would do one long run, and then 2 short, quick runs. One long run, 2 quick, short ones, and that would be my week of training. And by the time the race came around, I was wearing my brother's old running shoes, which I lent to him. I was wearing rugby shorts. I had a bottle of water, and the top I was wearing, it was a charity top, and it was because it was for a charity race, and it was so tight. I think it was a women's one. I ordered the wrong one, and I ended up with a podium finish, just because I was disciplined enough a couple of years previous. And it's amazing the small steps you can take that can lead to bigger ones down the line. It really is. Remember, it's only weird and unfamiliar to you because you're unaware of it now. And to dip your toe into something new and look at something from a different perspective is such an incredible step to take, not only in this form of running, but in your whole life entirely. And I was unaware of it when I went into that month, and it slowly made me realise that perhaps I do look at things in a complete wrong way. And if I was to keep on the path I'm on now, where would that take me? I didn't know when I started my running journey back in 2020, when I restarted it, I wasn't aware of where I would be in A&E a couple of years later. I wasn't aware of that. But since learning the technique and implementing it properly, I do take a step back on my other things, and I realise, well, what am I doing here that could be done differently? And what will happen if I stay on this traction of course? What would that happen? Like, what would happen? And it does make you rethink things, and it shows you the dedication that you need to learn this. And it's anyone can do it. It's not an entirely hard thing to do. It's just I had so many years of doing it, and that's why for a beginner it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant because a beginner into this doesn't have the years of baggage to drop. It might not even take them 2 weeks to learn. I'm not too sure. As long as you're dedicated enough, you have to be dedicated to learn it. And remember, it is natural. It is the way our bodies are supposed to move. It really is. And why would you hold that back from yourself? I don't know why you would. Well, thank you for coming to this lesson, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you very much.